Hi everyone, and welcome to the Game Breakdown, the podcast where we break down lots of different games. And in today's case, films, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about films that were once games. So good games that were turned into films, and whether or not it was actually worth turning that game into a film,
Mm.
and whether it was good or not. Yeah,
And whether games should be games and films should be films.
that's another interesting point. Whether we should just keep the two worlds separate and stop worlds colliding.
Exactly. Now, I have a confession
Oh,
because
okay. Straight out the gate.
straight out of the gate. Well, it's not really a confession, but like I've never actually kind of been one to watch these sort of films. Like, I've never kind of been like, oh, just because it's based on a game I might have played, like I want to watch it. I don't know why I avoid it. And it's only like recently that I've started watching them, and I'm like, I don't know whether they're just bad now or whether like some of them were always bad.
I feel like you did yourself a good service by avoiding them for this many years because they're terrible. Like there are a lot of them are terrible. There's some okay, there's like categories. There's like game films that are terrible. There's game films that are so bad they're good. And there's
Mm,
like some that are like, okay, decent.
yeah. I think all right, on that note, I feel like we can we can definitely start then talking about which I think everyone will know of, like really, is the Resident Evil films.
Oh, thought you'd never mention it. Okay, good. Yeah. The Resident Evil films. Okay, obviously, I have many, many thoughts and opinions about them, but you recently watched them for the first time, so I'll be interested to hear what you have to say first. So, how many of them have you watched, and what did you think of what you watched so far?
Right.
Yeah, the look you're giving me.
I know. So I watched the first one and
Okay,
I actually really enjoyed it. Okay, so I
not a bad film.
basically not a bad film. I've watched up to number 3 because I number 3 is just
Couldn't cope with anymore.
I couldn't cope with it. I really couldn't. I tried. I fucking tried. So the first one was like, yeah, the first one was good. It kind of fed into the games a bit. Like there was kind of a relation to it, and I didn't hate the main character, and I was like, okay, this is all right. I
Yeah,
actually quite enjoyed the second one. I didn't
yeah,
think it was as good, but like it really fed into like Resi 3. So it was
hmm,
almost like I knew what was coming. And it was just pure cheese gold. Like I
yeah.
loved it for that. And then number 3 happened. And I was like, I
Like
couldn't.
the real life games, and then number three
And then number 3
happened.
happened. And I don't know what or where we went, but like it went somewhere. And I was just like, this is ridiculous.
It goes somewhere, and the thing is, you stopped at 3. If you carry on beyond 3, it goes somewhere else, and it just keeps going to wherever this somewhere else is, and you're like, "Okay, we're still oh, there is actually another one. Okay, there's another one. We're gonna carry this on. We're gonna carry this thing we call a story on. No problem. Okay, let's carry on." I think okay, I really enjoy them because they're Resident Evil, and that's purely where it stops. Like, I enjoy the fan service of some of it. However, the films are just like the first one I think is not a bad film, like a standalone film. If you take away the Resident Evil label, I would watch that and be like, that was quite good. The second one, I think so too. I think that one's filled with more Resident Evil like fan service because you are introduced to characters like is the second one you're introduced like Jill and um can't even remember who else. Well, you're introduced to Raccoon City, aren't you?
Yeah.
And Stars and Jill and stuff.
Yeah. I was gonna say no, yeah, like you meet Jill in that one. Just for the record as well, I know there's obviously CGI films. At the moment, we're talking about the live action ones, just in case
Yeah.
anyone gets confused.
Oh,
Um,
side note though, have you seen the CGI ones?
I have.
Oh, we can talk about those too in a second. Good.
Yeah, we can. We can.
I feel like the first two films are good. I feel like they're interesting. I feel like they've got a Resident Evil label slapped on them, which is kind of like not too bad. But as a game film, it doesn't follow the story of the games really whatsoever. And that's the only thing that upsets me. Like, it's just because I would like to have seen. I don't understand when it comes to when games are turned into films. You've got a successful product with a successful brand with a successful story that everyone already loves and enjoys. Let's change everything and make it a film. Like, I don't get where that comes from. Like, I'm really confused as to why they didn't just follow the main story. There
Mm.
was like a rejected script from George Romero, who was the guy who did all like the Dawn of the Deads and stuff. You know him, like the famous horror movie
Yeah.
script writer, director. Yeah, so he did a version of Resident Evil, and Capcom outright rejected the script. And it was meant to be set in the mansion, and everyone was really upset because that would have been a better option. But I recently watched a video by a YouTuber named Ink Ribbon, and he's like really deep in the lore and the fandom, blah, blah, blah. And he got a hold of a copy of the original script. And after hearing him go through it, I completely understand why it was cut, because it was a really big mess. But still, I want to see a mansion story.
Yeah, I don't understand why we haven't got that. I mean, I know some people can say, well, you've got the games for that, but it's almost like you want to see it in real life, don't you? I know that sounds really strange, but like you want to see these characters brought to real life,
Yeah.
um, as authentically as possible. And I think number th- obviously like number two did the better job in a sense because you did kind of have them and you had Raccoon City. And I mean, I was a little let down by Jill in the actual film.
Yes, 100%. Because she's not allowed to be cool.
No,
Alice has to one up her at every fucking opportunity.
thing is though, she walks in the building when you first see her, and they're like, there's this big build up, and then she walks in a little tank top, like swinging her
Mhm.
hips, and then she does
Yeah.
like she does these fucking mad like gun action shit, and then you're like, yes, Jill's here, and then she
Mhm.
just gets completely kind of dismissed as if like she's not even relevant, and you're like, no, this is Jill. Like people have probably come to watch this film for Jill. Like if you knew she was in it,
Yeah.
So that was sucky, but I agree. Like I would much rather have a film that was actually like almost back to back of the game,
Yeah.
much rather than a complete readaptation. Saying that, I know it's not a film, it's a series, but I guess you can kind of categorize them in the same boat. Have you seen the Witcher series yet on
Yes.
Netflix?
Very
Really
good
good,
series. I really
really
enjoyed
good.
that.
Um, I've played a large amount of the Witcher game, but I haven't finished it. It's a pretty hefty game, and although it doesn't follow him exactly as you would in the game, I think it works really, really well. So I
Mhm.
think there's a very thin line between making sure that you're bringing that world alive when it comes to a
Yeah.
film. Um, that's the key, isn't it? And if you lose someone at the world, then you've got to make it the exact same story. Otherwise, it's just like not going to work.
I really agree with you. I also think The Witcher is, I mean, I'm not the biggest Witcher fan. That's not to say that I don't like the games. I just have never really got around to playing them completely. I think the Witcher games are a little bit like Dragon Age in the sense where their world is so open that really you could take those characters and just put them on a different adventure and tie in some of the characters, and it would really work. I feel like with Resident Evil, it's a linear story. It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end. And I feel like when you then put that into a film world, you can't really deviate unless you've got like a really solid gold idea of where to take the story that would make sense to the fans and to new people.
Mm.
I feel like Resident Evil, just for me, just this is what happens when you're Mila Jovovich and you're sleeping with the director of the film.
Yes, I
Because
know.
then literally that's how you become the superhero of the franchise, even though you're not even a game character whatsoever in any of the games. And you just turned up and you have superpowers and suddenly you're telekinetic. And can I just say the one grating scene, and this is one that really upsets me, we're jumping about and I'm sorry. But when we talk about Jill and how much of a cool character Jill is, in all the games, she's a cool character. In the film, you can see she's meant to be like a badass. She walks in, pops like three zombies' heads off, and she's like, "You're all idiots. There's a virus. I'm leaving. Let's go." She takes charge. And like every opportunity she tries to do something cool, she tries to save someone, she gets fucked over. Like there's a scene which you might remember in the second film where she goes to save Sherry. Well, she's not called Sherry. I can't even remember what her name is, but
Mm,
they're like little girl who's meant to play the role of Sherry, basically.
yeah.
And she goes into the school. She basically fights off a dog, like, and then like stealth kills a zombie, runs out, lights all the gas hobs, and then she does this thing where she throws a lit match behind her. Ultimate cool scene. And then the match goes out, and Alice appears with a cigarette and
And
sets the
just
whole thing on fire.
flicks it and completely defeats the whole.
And just again, just takes away all of Jill's cool points. And then, for some reason, Jill let go of the little girl and ran away. And Alice has to also, after throwing the cigarette, somehow turn around with a fire blanket because we all keep a fire blanket with us and surround and save the little girl's life. You're like, right, okay, like who the fuck are you? Like, I love Mila, great actress, fit as hell. don't belong here.
I
Let Jill
almost
do something
yeah.
cool.
I almost feel like they tried to make her, like, more important than the franchise itself, and it was
Mhm.
like, we now want to kind of we've started her down this path, but now we want it to be all about her, and she becomes this massive powerful thing, and it's actually
Yeah.
nothing to do with the games, and we
Mhm.
just want to fuck all the main cast off by making her like the forefront each time. Like, the
Yeah.
whole point of Nemesis was the fact that he fucking hated stars, and yet
Mhm.
I don't know, that kind of just gets completely
There's,
lost.
like, no mention of it, like,
That's
whatsoever.
yeah, and it's like, okay, so the whole premise of him is what? You know,
And
like
what's even weirder is that Nemesis is Alice's husband, who she doesn't even remember in the first film. It's just it's all so bizarre.
and
Your
then they
reaction is giving me over the life I need.
I'm just lifting my arms out like, what is happening? Because they fucking beef it out, and then he's just this cool like guy, isn't he? At the end of it, like Nemesis is just there. He's like, do you know what? No, I've had enough of this shit. And you're like, what the fuck, man? Like,
And then she fist fights him. What was
exactly.
that about? Where did that come from? What? Like, you're gonna have a fist fight with Nemesis, who's also, by the way, your husband, who was also infected in the first film, who's also like a test experiment, who you didn't remember in the first film because you had amnesia. Like, what the fuck? Like, it almost feels like I wrote this script when I was in like secondary school. Like, trying to,
I feel like we need to put like an 18 rating on this podcast because we're just swearing like, what is this shit? I've had
what is
enough.
this shit? It's full of shit. Not
You
happy
can't
about
help
it.
it though, because when you think about it, you're just like, no. But that also ties in to our next film,
Oh God,
if you're ready
what's
to
the next
talk
one?
about the next film.
Which one? Go for it. Hit me.
Spirits Within,
Oh fuck.
Final Fantasy.
I can't explain to you my level of disappointment with that film. When that film came out, I was, I don't even know. I'm gonna have a guess. I was like just out of primary school, maybe in secondary. I
Yeah.
would say somewhere between 10 and 12. Loved the Final Fantasy games. So hyped. And then I watched it. Did you know Square lost like millions and millions on that film because it's such a fucking flop and it's so terrible.
I was so buzzing for it, obviously, as well. And
Mhm.
I remember getting my dad to like rent it or something on like whatever TV package we
From like
had.
Blockbuster.
Yeah, it was like a blockbuster. I can't even a blockbuster. I
It was a
don't know what I'm
Blockbuster. It
saying.
was no Blockbuster.
It was a blockbuster issue. I don't know what it was. But like, yeah, so we basically rented it and I was so excited. My dad was like, yo, you like Final Fantasy? You excited to watch this? I was like, yeah, I'm really excited. And then I'd like sat down and I was like, whoa, what's happening? What are these like aliens? Why is there aliens? Like, what? I don't
Why
get
was there
it.
aliens? Like, what was happening? All the only fact I can recall from that film is the one that my mum kept spurting at me over and over again throughout the film was, "Did you know her hair cost $1 million?" Like, that was the only thing we knew about the film because it was the first, like, CGI feature-length film, and it
But it
was like,
looked amazing, to be fair. Like, I remember it
it
looking
did.
fantastic, and I was like, "This is awesome," but I just didn't understand it. But I kept watching it. I think I watched it quite a few times, to be fair, just because I guess I was still trying to find out what it was, like what it meant.
Yeah,
But then a lot of people can argue and say, "Well, Final Fantasy is set in loads of different kind of, you know, universes or
universes, yeah.
whatever." So that makes sense and fair enough. But like as we know, Final Fantasy and as Final Fantasy is still portrayed now, that's not really the case, is it? Like we've not had a space Final Fantasy, have we? Like
No, but that was what was even weirder. Again, the same thing wrong with Resident Evil. Let's take a successful story and not use any of it. Like, all the Final Fantasy games that I've played, I haven't played them all. I don't think anyone can have claimed to have played all 400 Final Fantasy games. But, like, there is not one that I know that has that story or those characters. And it didn't even try and link in a little bit with, like, any other little characters. I mean, there might have been some nods to a few Final Fantasies I haven't played because, again, there are literally 25 of those games. But I just
mm.
it didn't make any sense. I remember it finished and my dad said, "Oh, was it just like the game that you like to play?" And I went, "No, not at all." And that was just the end of the conversation. I was like, "Not at all." But that is an awful film. I will say, have you seen the other ones like Advent Children
I've
and
seen
stuff?
Advent Children. I
Mhm.
really liked that.
That was good. Again, not amazing, amazing films, but fan service is what you're after.
But I had clouded it, like it made sense. Like
Yeah, had Cloud, had Sephiroth, had all the gang.
had the
The whole
cloud.
gang was back together. It was
Yeah.
good.
So yeah, I'd say. it seems to be like a bit of a common theme where these films try to take away from the games. It's like maybe they have to do it. Maybe they're like, look, we're making a film and, we don't want it to actually be anything like the games because then you might as well just have the games. That's probably what the thought process is. But I feel like
Maybe you might
most
be right.
yeah, but I feel like most people would say, well, no, like I want to see a live action game. Like, if that makes any sense. I want
Well,
the characters to look like the characters in the game. Like I want the
mm,
closest resemblance you can, or they've got to act it out really well.
yeah.
We're acting like Resident Evil 1 even has good acting in the game, but like I mean it was just as cheesy as the games. Like we can't argue there. It was literally just as cheesy as the games.
Yeah, it was. It was just as cheesy as the games. But it's a bit like, but that's the thing. Maybe you're right, and maybe they do have to take it in a different direction for either contractual regions, for contractual
Rajan.
regions, or maybe for I don't know. They think that it won't succeed if they do the exact same thing on film, as same thing as game, maybe whatever. But I just think the whole point of having these games turned into films is that the game franchise is so successful. Let's take it one step further and bring it to the big screen now, like, I would have liked to have seen the story that I've played out with, how that would translate onto camera, or at least put my characters from the game in a extremely similar situation with, no one's saying they have to watch an hour and a half of puzzle solving or trying to like, do the crow puzzle in the RE1 mansion or something. Like,
That
I
would have
don't want
been
to sit.
cool to see though.
That's what I mean. Like, you wouldn't
Yeah.
like you don't want to sit there and watch 3 hours of puzzles, fine. But it would have been cool to see like iconic moments stuck in the game.
Mm.
Like, I don't understand why they didn't do that. I mean, on off the back of that, they are now making two things. So, a Resident Evil series is going on to Netflix, which is CGI, which is meant to be set something like a year or so often after Resident Evil 2 with Claire and Leon. And there is also a Resident Evil reboot coming out, which is a remake of the first film, but this one actually follows the game, apparently, in quote unquote. It's meant to be set within the mansion and have a rough story that is similar, which is fine. If it's similar enough to appease me as a fan, then I don't care. I don't want the exact same thing to happen
Mm.
because then there'll be no intrigue to the film.
Yeah.
But come on now. Come on now.
Come on.
Come on now.
It's got to have some kind of methodology behind each decision.
It
Like you
will.
said, there's got to be something like maybe if it isn't a complete copy, it's got to have some kind of reference. Like
Yeah.
there's got to be say like the crow room exactly. It doesn't have to be the exact room, but maybe she could do something similar with some paintings down a hallway somewhere. Like, but it would just feed into it. Like
Yeah.
that was a
Like, maybe
really
she's
bad
looking for a
example, but
puzzle. Maybe she's, like,
yeah,
looking for a key in a room with loads of paintings, and then a bunch of crows come out of nowhere and attack her.
yeah,
Like, that's the kind of reference I don't need her to walk in and be like, "Wow, there's crows on balance beams at the top of the room. Better solve this picture puzzle, I'll get attacked." Like, you don't need, like I don't need it to be ripped from the pages, but, like, I want inspired films inspired by gameplay.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah. And it's almost like we've kind of done a 360 in a way because it's sort of we've we've gone from games being made from films to then kind of having a bit of a weird kind of like a bad period of time where I don't think you could say any well, maybe not any, that's really dramatic, but majority of films that were based on games were never quite good. And now we're going into a new stage where it's like because gaming's so big now and you didn't need the games to support the films.
Okay, yeah.
You know what
See
I'm
what you're
saying? It's like
going. Mhm.
it's almost like okay, so games are like the biggest deal now, and the film industry needs to catch up with gaming by
Yeah.
making something like that. I think that's
Mhm.
almost how it comes across. And
I feel
yeah,
like also that on top of what you're saying is that the brand of the games has outgrown the gaming industry almost and needs to
yeah,
be used in several other facets. I mean, when you think of big ones like Resident Evil, I know we keep talking about it, but Resident Evil is obviously a very huge thing. There's games, there's merch, there's like cafes in Tokyo, like the Biohazard Cafe. Like they've really expanded. There's like CGI film and stuff. So now it's like, well, what can we do with this big monster that is Resident Evil? How do we turn that into another film? I know, let's finally relate it back to the games. Like, and also things like Tomb Raider. Like Tomb Raider is another one. That's a huge franchise that has outgrown the gaming industry in a way. Like my mum knows who Tomb Raider is and knows who Lara Croft is, but she's never played a game in her life. Do you know what I mean? Like she's become a household name. Everyone knows Lara Croft, especially because we're Brits. Like even my friends who don't game, but like, oh, like you've got like a Lara Croft Halloween costume, or you're doing this as Lara Croft. Like they become so big that it's like, right, you're no longer just a game character. You're your own entity. How can we market you in whatever
Yeah,
ways? Do you know what I mean?
it's so true. And I feel like, to be fair, I feel like the whole like Tomb Raider thing, it was the games were good, the films were brilliant. I really enjoyed
Mm,
the films.
I
So I
love
guess
the
I can't
films.
really say, like, oh, most of the films were shit. Because to be fair, Tomb Raider was pretty good. I really
Angelina
enjoyed it.
Jolie.
Angelina Jolie, yes.
I
Just
have. I will say, actually, on top of that, I haven't seen the latest Tomb Raider film. Have you? I say latest. I think it was 2018. I never bothered because it wasn't Angelina.
no, I actually didn't. I felt like,
No,
yeah, I didn't. I think I'm a bit like of an Angelina Jolie fan. So I'm just like, it's not right. But
but
she
now I
still
see her
looked
as
good.
Tomb Raider. Do you? I look at her and I think Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
Like, and Angelina Jolie is very much that character. Like, she played the very similar character in Salt. I don't know if you've ever seen Salt. That's another great film.
Hmm.
And like, she's very much into that kind of like espionage, spy, tomb raiding, action, like heroine kind of girl. So like, I see her as Tomb Raider, and I think, I mean, the Tomb Raider films are really cheesy. Don't get me wrong; they're like awful in that respect. They're very cheesy, but I think they're really good films. I really enjoy them.
They are really good.
There's
They're
big casts in them, like John Voight, Angelina Jolie, Daniel Craig. Like, there's big people in them.
oh yeah, definitely. I think they were always successful though, wasn't they? Like there was never one that you kind of thought was a bit shit. Like they all kind of were of the same kind of level, I think. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So but yeah, I mean I would love another film. I'd love another game. Like I
Mhm.
played what was it? Rising no. Yeah, was it Shadow of the Tomb Raider? I can never remember the name of the game. The latest one
Shadow
that
of
came out.
Yeah, Shadow
Yeah,
of the Tomb Raider, I
and
think.
I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a beautiful game. I wish it kind of stuck to its roots a bit more, like we've spoken before on previous podcasts about like the little
Mhm.
like her man like Croft Manor and stuff. But
Yeah.
like when it comes to that,
Sorry
when it
about the boxes.
sorry
I've
about the
just moved
boxes,
in.
but when it but when it comes to like Tomb Raider, I love it for its games. I love it for its films. I don't even know if there's a book. If there's a book, I'd read it. Um,
There probably is a novelization somewhere.
But you know what? Talking about this, there's also the Uncharted. Uh,
Oh, yes, that's
yeah.
being made now with Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg?
Yes.
Yep.
What do we
See,
think?
that
Yeah.
I can see being very successful. I was actually gonna talk to you about this yesterday, I forgot. So, yeah, I saw, Tom Holland tweet the other day in costume as Nathan Drake, and then Mark Wahlberg tweeted a picture of him and a moustache being Sully.
Mm,
I'm not a huge Uncharted fan. Not because they're not good, but to me, it was a little bit like just Tomb Raider with a man. So like, I didn't really stick with them for very long. I've played the first two, and I didn't hate them. I thought they were really good. I'm just not like a huge fan.
yeah.
But I think it'll be. I think the story is fun enough to turn into a film. But that's like Tomb Raider, and it goes back to what we said before about like Resident Evil and The Witcher and stuff. When you've got like a linear story, like the Resident Evil story is a continuous story that you want to see on camera. With like stories like The Witcher, you can choose an adventure and insert those characters. And just like Tomb Raider, the Tomb Raider games and the Tomb Raider films don't match up, but it doesn't matter because each game is a completely separate adventure. So this can just be another one of Tomb Raider's adventures, and it could just be another one
Yeah.
of Nathan's
Just another
adventures.
tomb, like another
Yeah,
whatever.
like, you can do that.
I mean, I will say really I'm not vibing with Tom Holland as
I think he's too
Nathan.
young.
He looks like he's just got too much of an innocent face. And like
Yeah, especially after Spider-Man, he's too much of a little preppy teenager. He's got
yeah,
that
and
look to him, hasn't he?
yeah, and a lot of people are saying, well, it's good that we're starting him with him being young because that means that this they can make a series of films or whatever, and he can just grow up and blah 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 blah. But it's like I guess it depends what era this film's set. I mean, I've not properly looked into it too much because
No.
I kind of want to wait a bit further into things before when everything's kind of like finalized. But
Yeah,
like, yeah, I'm not feeling it because I always see Nathan as just being a little bit rugged, a little bit kind of like
bit more
scruffy, a
gritty.
bit more fun, yeah, and like bouncy and fun. Whereas like Tom Holland to me just looks very like kind of serious and young, and I don't get the same kind of vibes from him. I think if
No,
anything, bloody Noel, who actually plays um
Nathan.
Nathan, would have probably been better. But that's just my opinion. I'm just biased, maybe.
There's a few times where I've thought things like that. When you've got like a voice actor of the game who they also use for mocap, you're like, why not just cast them because
Yeah.
that is them? Like just cast that person because they're already the character. They already know the complete backstory. We'll be able to portray it in a way.
Exactly. They are that character. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm sure with a bit of makeup and maybe a bit of CGI, like they're doing with the Resi, you can
yeah.
really kind of change people's faces. It's amazing what you can do now. So it's like, you know,
Who would you cast as Nathan Drake then? Because I actually think that a younger Mark Wahlberg would have been the right choice.
yeah, that would
Like
work.
someone like you need someone who's like quite comical and like I suppose like
Mm,
charming, but also rough and gritty.
yeah.
Like almost like a Daniel Craig type, I suppose. But it's too
I
James
would,
Bond.
yeah. No, I think no, but I think Nathan goes a little bit James Bondy in the
Mm,
game because he has these little tucks and that in certain scenes, and obviously the games get better and better each time. So, but I can imagine him like that. Like I could
yeah.
imagine that kind of job. Speaking of James Bond, can we just
Mm.
say Sean Connery?
Oh, R.I.P. Sean
I
Connery.
know,
I
rest
was
in
really
peace.
upset by that.
He was the James Bond,
He was
wasn't
the
he?
OG James Bond. He was I think he was the first person to play it on the big screen, wasn't he? First person to play James Bond on the big screen.
Yeah. But I always say, like, for me, like, he was the James Bond. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was the
Mm.
first time I got introduced to the character of the films, and he just played it really well. But he did loads of brilliant other films. Like, he was just a good egg.
He did. I really like Sean Connery and a lot of he's like one of those people where you don't necessarily you can't necessarily I can't necessarily list all his films off, but any film that I saw him in, you knew it was going to be good, and you're like, "Oh, Sean Connery's in this; it's going to be great." There's that film that he did, and I can't remember what it's called now, and it's with that woman, and they play spies. Hold on one second, I'm actually going to Google it because he did this film. What's that? I think it's called Entrapment. Yeah, Entrapment, and he that's a great film. That's him and some other woman. Anyway, Sean Connery. I was really, I was really sad there about Sean Connery. Honestly, I think no matter what he was in, he was always good. Like
Yeah.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and obviously the first James Bond, and Entrapment, and all those other kind of films. Like he was really, really a good actor. So sad. And another like Brit, well, a Scot, but still a
Yeah.
UK
Another
guy.
one. But I thought he was
One
worth
more shit thing
mentioning.
to add to 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, let's talk about it. Sean Connery in his younger days, he'd have been a good Nathan Drake,
Oh my god. Well, yeah. I think that's why it
right?
came to my mind because I was like, I could imagine him doing
Yeah.
that really, really well, actually. Really well.
Sean Connery, shaken
Yeah.
not stirred. Yeah, he'd have been really good.
He'd have been really good.
R.I.P. Sean. Um, so moving on to another film franchise, um, Hitman.
Yes.
What did you think?
Hitman.
Are you a fan of the games? Are you a fan of the film? Do you play either?
I
Do you
really,
watch either?
really enjoy the game. I wouldn't say I follow the games really strictly, but
Yeah, same.
like if it's like on sale, like I'll buy it,
Mhm.
because like I enjoy it. It's
Yeah,
one of those games you can kind of just put on if you just fancy being a bit stealthy. So
yeah,
I guess when we spoke about the Metal Gear Solid podcast, and I said, "Oh, there's not like no games really done stealth that well since." It is a really good stealth game, Hitman. But yeah,
it's more comical, isn't it? It's more of a comical. It's not as serious as Metal Gear. Like Metal Gear is like a really serious story, isn't it? Whereas
I guess
Hitman's more like not serious, but it's not like the world is going to be destroyed kind of serious
no,
or the
yeah.
Matrix. Like it's just like kill this person.
Remember the Matrix game? That was banging
Oh, the Matrix. Oh, see,
on
that's another thing
PS2.
that I'd like to
Yeah,
talk about eventually. Films that were turned into games. Because do you remember back in the day, you used to have a good film, and within minutes there'd be a PlayStation, an Xbox, and a Game Boy game out the next day to go along with it. And sometimes you complete the game before you've even seen the film, and the story would be the exact same,
yeah.
like the
I
Spider-Mans and stuff.
I always absolutely adored the games made from films. I just thought
Yes,
they were
same.
like always spot on, especially Toy Story. That was
My God,
great.
yes.
All the little Disney ones. We had Hercules, we had Aladdin, I mean, Aladdin was like, well, it's still a film, isn't it? Not just because it's not live
Yeah, it's still
action.
a film.
Still
It's
a film.
Disney now.
But yeah, all the Disney films are always brilliant. Fucking loved them.
The Disney games are some of the best games on the PS1
That's what I
especially,
meant. Yeah,
and
Disney
we
games.
have all of Disney to thank for that because they basically see, they obviously, this is why Disney's the smart marketing machine that they are. They turned everything into a game. So there is an Aladdin game, there's a Lion King game, there's a Toy Story game. Like it just goes on and on and on. Everything they ever did became a game. Like one of my favorite games on the PS1 was Donald Duck Quack Attack. Did you ever play that?
Yes.
That was so good. And Toy Story 2, also one of the best PS2 games. Like even if you Google like top 10 PS2 games, it's always on like the top 10 list.
Yeah. Well,
It's
Toy
brilliant.
Story 2 was on PS1, but they brought
Yeah,
out plenty of other, like they brought out another Toy Story game. But then they suddenly stopped. But they were like top notch. Like they always were. The games were always so good. I
top
think
notch. Like Kingdom Hearts, really. That's Disney, isn't it?
yeah. Well,
Disney Final
yeah, they
Fantasy.
incorporated everything, didn't they? They I guess they kind of saw like an absolute niche just to have a game that focused on all the other games, essentially,
Yeah,
all the films, all the different worlds, all the different characters. And it definitely paid off, didn't it? Really, when it came to that game,
100%.
they stopped making the games though because a lot of the times the development companies would only have about a year to pipe these games out, and over time, I think they just realized like it weren't a viable thing. Because when you think about how big games are now and how big how big just the entertainment industry is as a whole, like music,
Mhm.
games, everything, I think it would be hard to keep everything up to the same level, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think as quality's improved in technologies and gaming as well, like for a PS1 game, yeah, you probably could push that out in a year. Like we had a sequel every year for certain games.
Hmm.
PS2, a bit much harder, but still it worked. And then when PS3 came along, it was like, we can't produce a game of this detail and this size because the film industry has never really changed. Is it like producing a film is still roughly the same amount of time as it would have taken 10 years ago, whereas games are very different because the tech has jumped so much.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like CGI in films and stuff is, I mean, everything's pre-rendered. It's a different kind of
Yeah.
story. But when you've got gaming, it's obviously not pre-rendered. Everything's got to be done slightly different,
Hmm.
and there's a lot more technical hurdles to jump. So it's like, yeah, it's not as easily done, which is a shame because I really, really, really do miss games based on films. I would love if there was like another Toy Story game. I'm
Yeah.
crying out for another Toy Story game because I've adored all of them. So, but because I mean they're still bringing the films out, but
They
they
are.
probably won't
I
have.
just miss those days of like of seeing a film and then be like, "Oh, I can't wait to get the game of this." Like
Yeah,
that was always my thought in the cinema was like, "I can't wait till this is a game. It's bound to come out soon," and it
you'd get
always
your
did.
McDonald's, you'd have you'd have the little monster. Say it was Monster Inc. You'd have your
Yeah,
McDonald's, you get the toy, then you'd watch the film, then you'd get your game, and it was just like a never-ending thing. Now you
love it. You
don't
go
have
to
it.
Cineworld
Yeah.
on like, or not even Cineworld. What did it used to be called before it was Cineworld?
Oh God, it was this is in the UK, by the way, people.
Yeah.
Uh,
We go to like the Odeon. You'd go to the
yeah, the
Odeon,
OG.
and then after you finish at the Odeon or Cineworld, you'd then go to Pizza Hut. That was always the thing. Go to a Pizza Hut, and then you then discuss the game that's eventually coming out. I do miss those days. I miss the fact that you could always get a game based on the film that you just saw.
Yeah, there was always multimedia for a particular thing. So, I mean, I think Harry Potter, as Harry Potter,
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. I think Harry Potter's. I mean, obviously, it's a bit of a shit topic at the moment with old J.K. Rowling, but that series of
Oh, it's fair.
films, yeah. Obviously, we had the books, then you had the films, then you had the games. That kind of did
Yeah.
it all, didn't it? Then there was music. I mean, that's something that literally Harry Potter just blew up, didn't it?
Harry Potter, I mean, J.K. Rowling, whatever you want to say about her, the woman is a marketing genius, really. Because I remember when she first come out with the book, it was like she said that she used to go to Starbucks. She like couldn't pay any of her bills, and all she had was a laptop, and she used to go to Starbucks, because they used to give she used to go buy a coffee or something and use their free Wi-Fi and that the free charging units or something, and then she sat and wrote her book. So she was like the lowest point of her life, wrote this book, and now she's like one of the richest women in the world because she's got like a whole empire. And you think, well done, girl. You might be slightly transphobic on Twitter, but hey.
slightly
Your thoughts
transphobic.
are.
But she also copied the idea, and there is that Harry Potter was based off of a
Oh, we
different
could go
kind of
there.
book. This is not a topic for this. We are a gaming podcast, all right?
Speaking of that, there is also another whole
Yeah.
scandal of Simba. Have you heard about that? The Lion King.
What?
That Simba's actually a rip-off of another character called Kimba, who is a lion in
Probably
this
is.
exactly the same story.
It probably is. I
Love
wouldn't
James
even
Ripper.
deny it. And I mean, they are seriously guilty when it comes to their animations because a lot of them are just draw overs of original scenes, just
I know.
completely drawn over. So, I mean, that's business. That's how you make money in it. It's
Business.
all about, less work, more money, all that
Love
shit.
it.
Love it.
Another one which I've just thought about is
Maybe. So Hitman's really good. Like I said, yeah. So I never followed the games hugely, but like I've always really enjoyed them, and especially the last one they did. And literally, the film felt at the beginning, it was one of those things where it felt really kind of like shit, and I was like, I don't know what's happening here. And then it got really good, and then it got a bit shit, but then the shitness became good, and it was really cheesy.
what are you talking about?
I don't. You told me to hold a conversation, and here I am.
Carry on. The shitness became good. Yeah.
Yeah. But it did. It was a cheesy game. It was good. I enjoyed it. Hitman Agent 47 is actually a really fucking good film. So is Doom. Doom is cheesy as fuck, but it is good.
Oh wait, has Doom got the Rock in it? I think I've seen that.
Yes.
Yes, I have seen that. That is cheesy, but it is a good film
Yeah. It's
because
that
it's got the
cheesy.
Rock
It's
in it,
good.
and the Rock is whatever he touches turns to gold.
Yeah. That's it.
No, I love that for you. I love that for you.
Thanks.
I haven't seen the Hitman film. I will say that is one that I haven't seen.
There's a few. The one I watched was Agent 47. I didn't like the character they picked for him, but as time goes on, you just accept him and
Mhm.
he becomes like a thing, you know? So it's like, okay.
Interesting. So speaking of that, actually, so we did ask a few people on Twitter if there was any games that became films they wanted us to talk about, and I believe you've got some of the answers in front of you. So let us know, Carrie, what kind of games that became films did they mention?
Now, the one that stands out to me the most, because I absolutely adored the games, was Silent Hill.
Oh, okay. See, I've seen the film.
Hmm.
Haven't played the game.
Haven't played you yet. You haven't. You haven't played the game, but yeah, you've
No,
seen the film.
I have.
What did you think of the film without any knowledge of the game?
That's an interesting question. It was a while ago I saw it, but the film I thought was good. It was very, again, keyword cheesy, but also not just cheesy. It was a little bit. This sounds really stupid because I'm talking about a video game that became a film, but it seemed very unrealistic. Like, but almost, but not in the way you think. I mean, not like, oh my god, zombies. Like in the sense of it just seemed a little bit far fetched. Like there's a scene that I remember where they're like running around a car, like a fight scene that's happening around a car, and just everything that plays out just seems very like okay, that wouldn't really happen. It made me laugh a few times. But I thought it was a good film. It was an interesting watch. I'd watch it again, but it was a bit like, meh.
See, I fucking absolutely adored the Silent Hill film. It was the first
Oh,
one because there was
okay.
two. So there was Revelations, which came out later,
Oh, come on.
and then you had the OG Resi film, which followed kind of loosely off of the games. Some people might think
Oh,
I'm a
did
bit
it
weird
really?
for
Okay, that's
saying that.
interesting. So did
Like
it follow loosely off the games?
real loosely, like real
Okay.
loosely.
Resident
Like
Evil
there was a
loosely or
car, um, mm, not particularly Resident Evil loosely, but like
okay.
yeah, it was still like Silent Hill, whereas Resident Evil's like we're gonna say Resident Evil, but we're just not. And now I'm gonna fucking be a superhero person that can have
But now I'm
telekinesis
gonna
and
use my
shit.
telekinesis.
Has nothing to do with zombies or whatever. No, but yeah. So with Silent Hill, you, you have like a main character and she kind of goes after this girl and it's set in Silent Hill, so like
Mhm.
the whole place and all the places that she goes to and stuff very much feeds in all the characters and all the horrific creations still are all very much like in the game. So I
Yeah.
think that's why I absolutely adored it, because I was like this is it, like this is Silent Hill, whether the characters are
Mhm.
the same or not. Exactly, the world was the same, which was the key thing. So yeah,
Okay.
I really enjoyed that film. I would say that's definitely like up there for me. It's like one of my favorite film based on games.
Now, do you think it's one of your favorites because you're a Silent Hill fan, or do you think it's actually a good film?
I
Like
think
if
it's
you
I think it's actually a good film.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
I feel like if I hadn't have watched it, if I hadn't have played the games, I would have still loved it because I just love that kind of creepy, weird, dark, twisted sort of like that kind of scene. Do you know what I mean? So
See, but isn't that funny that they've done the same thing that Resident Evil did, if you like, where they just use the characters in their own creative way, and you think that's a somewhat good film, but you don't think the Resident Evil films are good.
well,
Isn't
so
that interesting?
hmm,
I would say, from my limited knowledge of Silent Hill, the story is so bizarre and out there that really it. And I think this isn't there multiple endings, Silent Hill,
hmm.
which again makes more of a um like takes the pressure off, I think, would be as a film director, because you haven't got to stick to a stringent story. You can be more creative, like we said about The Witcher and like those kind of games.
I think so. Yeah, I think Silent Hill is definitely more of the thing of the world and not so much what's going on in it. So it's more about the environment and the enemies. Those are what make the games. Whereas with Resident Evil, it's almost a case of kind of like, well, the characters each you get attached to like the main characters more,
Hmm.
and zombies and the world is just kind of a thing, like that. Whereas with Silent Hill, like I don't know, that's just how I perceive it. I don't know if any of that made sense.
No, I get what you mean. You mean sort of like if they create the world that Silent Hill is set in, and then create their own unique story within that world,
You
rather
just
than
accept it. Whereas like
yeah.
with Resi, it was very difficult because it was kind of just set in your everyday kind of place. But it was an experiment, and it was all
Mhm.
very kind of based off that. Whereas like with Silent Hill, it's a bit more open to interpretation. As long as you've got the weird enemies, it can be kind of whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like either set it in the world and do your own original story within that world, or make a carbon copy of the game as a film. I think
Hmm.
when you half-ass it and try and do in the middle, it doesn't work out, as Resident Evil has shown us.
Exactly. Okay, so yeah, scrolling through, a lot of the people were saying obviously Silent Hill, Tomb Raider was a very, very popular one.
Mhm.
A few people said like Detective Pikachu as well. I am yet to
Oh,
see that. I know. I need to
I
watch that.
did actually reply to someone on that Twitter thread about that. I saw Detective Pikachu not so long ago. I saw it when it came out. I took my nephew to go see it. Great film. Had to take a child with me so I could justify the fact that I was there, because
Just a child,
as
just a random
just
child.
just a random child, found a kid on the street, and I was like, "Come, kid, I'll pay for your ticket. Let's go. I can't go.
I need to watch Pikachu.
I need to watch Pikachu." No, I took my nephew because I am a 28-year-old man walking into a theater to go see Pikachu. Um, it was a really good film. I really enjoyed it. I've never played, because there are specific Detective Pikachu games that I've never played. Obviously, I'm a big Pokemon fan, but I've never actually played those specific ones. So the storyline was kind of completely new to me. I don't know how much of it is based on those Detective Pikachu games, but obviously it doesn't really matter to me because it was set within the Pokemon universe, and I feel like they did it so well, because that could have easily been so fucking shit. Like, Pokemon is such a wild story.
He's
Like,
voiced by Ryan Reynolds, isn't it?
he is, yeah. Pikachu's done by Ryan
That was
Reynolds.
one thing that I think that was one thing that initially put me off watching it.
That he had a voice, that Pikachu had a
Yeah, and I
voice.
think maybe a
Yeah,
lot of people might think that because Pikachu is like Pikachu. You don't know
yeah,
him as like fucking right, like Deadpool. You know what
like
I mean?
Pigroll. Yeah, like, you don't expect to hear Pikachu chatting like that. But
Yeah.
I think it was so good. I think because Pokemon is so wild, like, you have creatures running around with powers and stuff. It's not your everyday thing. And it would be quite cheesy to have like real live actors being like, "I choose you," and like throwing Pokeballs everywhere.
Yeah.
But the way they made the city so gritty and realistic, like underground Pokemon fights and like Pokemon trafficking, and kind of made it like a nice cutesy game in a real life gritty atmosphere, I think was done so well. I really enjoyed it.
That literally
It's
sounds
a
like
really good game.
nothing I would expect. Like
You wouldn't,
underground
would you?
trafficking of Pokemon and all sorts. No.
It's brilliant. It's really, really good. It's, well, obviously, if you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it for you. But it's, yeah, Pikachu's voiced by Ryan Reynolds,
Mm.
and the premise of the very beginning of the film, which you find out, is that the main character, his dad passes away, and he's in his dad's apartment, like going through his stuff, and this Pikachu turns up that can talk. he's like, Pikachu, like, and Pikachu used to be his favorite Pokemon, and like he talks to Pikachu and learns information, and then the story starts from there, and it's really, really interesting. But they go to things like underground Pokemon battles where people are like having illegal, like cockfights, where like people would bet on the chickens and have them fight and stuff.
Mm.
It's like that, but Pokemon, like underground fights and stuff with like gritty, like Charizards with like slices in their eye and stuff. It's really good. It's really good.
I feel like I'd quite like that, to be fair. I've been
My
having
friend
some
liked it.
cravings recently to jump back into the Pokemon game, so
I don't think Pokemon gets enough credit. Bloody
I
good game.
I've said this
I think every
before,
game is the
like
same, but they're good.
I prefer the OG Pokemon to the new one.
Yeah,
Like,
I do.
so yeah. But
I don't
like
know anything beyond Generation 2.
it's the only gen that we care about.
Yeah, the only gen we care about. We stand Generation 1. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of our time, which I'm quite annoyed about because there's so many things we haven't covered. Like we haven't
Yeah.
spoken about the Super Mario film, Sonic the Hedgehog film. There's too many. What about the cheesy ones like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat? Oh, please tell me you've seen the Street Fighter film.
No.
Right. Okay.
I need
I
to
think
watch it for part 2.
you do. I think we should do a part 2 to this podcast because the Street Fighter film is brilliant. It falls into that middle category that I told you about, where it's so bad that it's good.
See, I
Like
do
they
love
base
those films. The more bad that is good, I love that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean?
that's what makes it so good. I mean, it has Jean-Claude Van Damme in it, and it has Kylie Minogue, good
Kylie
old
Minogue?
Kylie Minogue. So Kylie's in it, and they made, from what I remember as a kid, they basically. Do you remember the Street Fighter character Cammy?
Yes.
She wears like a unitard and a little beret. She didn't exist before the film. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember, but from what I remember, they basically made Cammy so Kylie could be in the film. Like, it's so good. Okay, we need to watch that. We need to watch the more. Have you seen the Mortal Kombat film?
No. Do you
Okay,
know what
that's
my
it.
issue is with these films? They're actually really difficult to come by.
I
To
will
try and
say
find them.
nowadays they are. Yeah, I saw them back in the day. I remember we rented Street Fighter from Blockbuster. That's how old.
Blockbuster was the place to be, and now that
I
don't
miss
exist. Where do we
Blockbuster.
get our nerdy game films from? I don't know.
I saw a tweet the other day that said I didn't know these were the best times of my life, and it was just like walking into Blockbuster on like a Saturday and like 7 o'clock and getting a film. I miss that so much. Being like, do you remember we used to literally be like, what should we do? Like, let's just go to Blockbuster. We'll get a film, get a takeaway, and get a drink.
Yeah.
Like that was the ultimate Saturday night, and now it's just. I know it's Netflix instead. It's fine, but like that whole atmosphere of walking into the rental shop and what video should I rent and stuff. And do
Well,
you remember
for
like
me,
Blockbuster had a rewind fee? If you didn't rewind the video before you give it back, they charged you £1.
yes,
Those were
I
the
do.
days.
See, I really loved Blockbuster purely for the fact that I was introduced to so many games that I probably never would
Yes.
have played and never would have experienced. And they were like, I would say they were quite random games, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, I've been kicking myself for like years trying to think of these particular games that I rented from them, and there was two main games that I could only really kind of like minorly remember. And I've
Hmm.
got a friend who's like really good at remembering like anything like that. So I just
Really
said,
good remembering.
yeah. I was like, you literally just play. I was like, I think it's set in Japan, and you play as this guy, and he gets stressed out, and you have to do all these mini games to stop him from getting stressed out. I had no idea what it was called, and he was like, Incredible Crisis. It was Incredible Crisis. It was amazing. It was so hard. I've tried it recently. It's still so hard. But like, what I'm saying is like, I just feel like I never would have come across that game.
What's that game about? Incredible Crisis.
You
It
just play
sounds
as a
familiar.
stressed out guy. And you've got like 50, I think it's like 54 mini games of just different things. So it starts off and you're kind
Sounds
of
like
like,
my
it's brilliant. It was
life.
so good. It was on PS1 and it was great. And then there was Fair Fighters, which I forgot about, but he told me, and you play as this like pissed off bear. And
Oh, I played that.
yeah, and I got that from there, and I probably
Probably
never
around your
would.
house. Like,
Yeah, but yeah, I think I probably got like Evil Twin from there as well or something. Do you remember that?
oh, yes, I do remember that.
So many
I played that
games.
with Jules. I will say, I agree with you completely. There are so many games that I came across from just for instance from Blockbuster because that was the beauty of it. If you knew a game was coming out, you could rent it first and see if you enjoyed it, and then you can go and buy it.
Yeah,
Which probably isn't the best for the gaming market, but it was like it made it more authentic because you knew you were buying something you really wanted. The two games that I remember specifically renting from Blockbuster were well, actually there was three, but I'll tell you about the third one in a minute. You'll laugh at the story. So, well, the first ones I rented because I saw it and I thought, what is this? It was a spin-off from Tekken, and I think it was called Death by Degree or Degree Death or something. And it was about Nina Williams. Remember Nina from Tekken?
yes.
The girl with like the ponytail. It was a
Yeah.
story about, it was like a almost like a platformer of from like based around her and her experience of the Devil Gene from the Tekken games. Very bizarre game, very weird. And I remember I picked it up and I went to the counter and the guy behind there went, "Oh, you're getting this Tekken game?" And I went, "Yeah." He went, "It's not really good." And I went, "Oh." And he turned to my mum and was like, "Yeah, it's just not good." He was like, "It's basically about the Devil Gene story." I mean, I was like 10. And he's like, "Give me this rundown of the game, spoiling it for me." And he was like, "Yeah, it doesn't really play well. The controls aren't good, but yeah, it's not really good." And then he looked at my mum and she looked at me. She went, "Do you want to pick a different game?" And I went, "Oh no, well, I'll just give it a go then. But it's probably, even if it's crap, I'll give it a go." And I thought, "Fuck you, I really want to play this game." Like, I mean, I will say it wasn't the best, but still, that's my decision to make, not the guy at Blockbusters.
There's nothing worse when someone tries to tell you about a game. Like, I could make a podcast on that when, like, just people trying to ruin shit. It leads back to Last of Us Part 2 this year and everyone trying to ruin it. And for me,
Yeah.
it was probably one of, like, I would say the game of the year for me by
Mhm.
far, you know?
I
Um,
do hate when people spoil things on purpose. When if you do it by accident, it's one thing, but when people take pleasure in spoiling something for you, that really does upset me because
mhm,
what have you gained apart from, my
being an
hatred,
absolute twat.
being an absolute capital C. The other game that I remember from Blockbuster is Prince of Persia 2, The Sand. No, what was Two Thrones? Was that number three? What was it called? No, the Warrior Within. Warrior Within.
Yes, I liked that one.
I liked that one, but I got it from Blockbuster first, and I tried to finish it within the 3 days that I had rented
Yeah,
it,
you
and I
didn't have it
couldn't.
for long, did you? You had to really
No,
kind of
it
go for it.
was like a couple of days, and I remember that I couldn't finish the last level in time, and I didn't know it was the last level until I then went out and bought it, and then I loaded it up, played one level, and I completed the game, and I was happy but pissed off. I was like, "Oh, I
Oh
really
my
would have just
god.
rented it again because it wasn't be something I play again and again." But I'm glad that I've got my own copy, though. I do love that game. A really funny one that I'll tell you is, do you remember the game Crazy Taxi?
Crazy Taxi was brill.
Right,
Stressful as fuck. I played it so much once that I actually dreamt about it.
that's a problem.
Yeah,
That's
it
therapy
like
needed.
it literally no, but have you ever done something so much that you close your eyes and you see it?
Yeah, yeah.
That was me with Crazy
My
Taxi.
daily job, I dream about. I wake up in cold sweats thinking about it.
Living
Um,
to life.
the funniest thing is this wasn't even me, this was my sister. I'm outing her on the podcast. She, we had Crazy Taxi. I'm sure it was Crazy Taxi. And she scratched the disc to shit and
Oh
it stopped
shit.
working because her kids got hold of it and like my nephews and nieces destroyed it. So she then rented it from Blockbusters and did the old switcheroo.
No wonder
Right.
it went
Look at
bust. I'm
exactly, do you know
looking
what I
at
mean?
you, Karen.
Look, back in the 90s, you did what you had to do just to get. Oh my god. See, those are the days I miss that. That's the reason why Blockbuster went bust, and stealing pick and mix is the reason why Woolworths went bust. That's just the circle of
Rip.
life. Did you hear that Woolworths might be coming back?
Apparently they're only having a select 3 stores. This is a UK shop, I think.
Woolworths is pretty sure it's just a UK only chain. Miss Woolworths.
Woolworths
Anyway,
was a good shop. Yeah.
right off topic. Sorry, everybody.
I know, did we even talk about films? Or did we just talk about games
Just talk
and
about Woolworths.
Blockbuster and Woolworths?
Oh my god. Right. Well, I think we've said all we can for this one because it's as long enough as it is. But when we do a part two, we'll have to talk about, right. Okay, your homework is, you've got homework, is to watch Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. I want you to attempt to watch the rest of the Resident Evil films so you can
Oh
see
my
where they
god.
go. See if you can find the Super Mario film. I have the Street Fighter film somewhere on video. I don't know how I can watch it because I don't own a
I
video
don't
player.
have
We'll
a
find it.
VHS player.
Bold of you to assume I'd post it to you. But like, I will find a way for us to watch it, legally or not, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it. This has been a funny one. I've enjoyed this
I've also enjoyed it. It was a trip down memory lane for sure.
for sure. Right, so hope you enjoyed listening. If you would like to maybe mention some films, some games that became films that we haven't spoken about, then please do be vocal on Twitter and let us know what you think. And then maybe we can talk about it next episode, so part two. So yeah, just to remind you all, we do have a Twitter, and if you would like to be involved in the next episode, then please do let us know what games that were turned into films that you think are fantastic or you think are tragic, and we can talk about those ones too because there is so much to chat about. So yeah, talk away.
Also, We
Go.
are in the works of getting our podcast on YouTube. So
Yeah,
if this
we are.
happens to be on YouTube at this present time, then leave a comment.
Yeah, leave a comment, leave a like, leave a hate comment if you want. Just leave a comment.
And then we can talk to you more direct then, can't we?
Yeah, that'd be fun. That will be fun actually. Because Twitter's
Aye.
fun, but I think YouTube would be fun. We'll see. But yeah, do follow us on Twitter as well. We do have Twitter at TG Breakdown, and we do have an Instagram too at TG Breakdown Podcast. We need to get some more followers in there, so please give us a little follow and a little like. And yeah, hope you enjoyed listening to this one, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Peter.
Oh, Peter. Oh my god, okay, we'll go right. Bye.
Bye.